Tennis is full of freakish athletes and world-class ball strikers, but even the best players on earth have glaring weaknesses. And today, we're building a player made entirely from those weaknesses. We're talking top 20 stars with bottom-tier weapons, a serve nobody feared, a return that barely existed, movement that belongs in a retirement home, and a mentality that crumbled right when the finish line appeared. If the GOAT debate celebrates perfection, today we explore the opposite. This is the worst, best tennis player ever assembled. We start with the most important shot in tennis, which makes it brutally unfortunate if this is where you're weakest. You might think of guys like David Ferrer or even Prime Nishikori when people talk about elite players with average serves, but for an all-time serve in our cursed build, it has to be Diego Schwartzman. Schwartzman reached world number 8, made a Roland Garros semi, a Masters final, qualified for the ATP finals. But his serve, especially when he was inside the top 10, was miles below his peers. One analysis of his peak years put his hold percentage at about 73%, when the rest of the top 10 were holding around 86%. He hit far fewer aces than other top players. He won fewer first serve points. He got almost no free points, and almost every service game felt like a grind rather than a reset. Great player, but one of the least effective serves for a guy ranked that high. So our all-time worst best serve goes to Diego. For the modern version, the numbers point to a similar story, just a slightly taller body. Alex de Minaur is one of the best returners on the planet. The ATP analysis showed him leading the tour in break rate in 2024, breaking serve in 31.6% of the games, ahead of Alcaraz and Djokovic, while ranking only 60th in service games won that season. Career-wise, he's won about 80% of his service games, compared to the 85 to 90% you see from the very best servers. He's not a bad server, he's actually improved a lot. But among elite top 10 and top 20 players, it's clearly the least intimidating shot in his arsenal. Most of his damage is done on the return. So for the modern version of our worst best player, the serve is a blend of Schwartzman's lack of free points and de Minaur's functional but rarely dominant serving profile. Holding serve is the easy part. It's the return that turns life into a tie-break circus. For the all-time cursed return, there are 3 obvious candidates. John Isner, who won about 94% of his service games, but only 9.7% of his return games. Riley Opelka, in the same range, with a career returns games won figure just under 10%. Ivo Karlovic, who took serve-bot tennis to its purest form. Karlovic's career-high ranking was 14, and he sits in the all-time record books for his serve. But his return games won sit around 9% over his career, which is about as low as it gets for someone that successful. If Schwartzman is the blueprint for elite returner with weak serve, Karlovic is the complete opposite. So our all-time curse return goes to Ivo Karlovic. For the modern version, the archetype has a new face, Giovanni Perricard. Articles and ATP stats have him winning close to 90% of his service games with serve speeds regularly over 220 km per hour. But he's won only about 8% of his return games so far in his career. There was even a stat this year that he went over 100 return games at non-clay slams without generating a single break point. So our modern curse return goes to Perricard. He's already a generational serve bot and a generational non-returner. This one's tricky. Forehands at this level are rarely bad, but someone still has to come last. For the all-time forehand, we're going with Viktor Troicki. Troicki reached world number 12 and had a long, solid career, but match charting data put his forehand among the least effective of the top-tier players. Low rates of forehand winners per point, and a low share of forehands that end in winners or forced errors compared to his peers. It functioned more as a neutral rally ball forehand than a weapon. When you stack it against the big forehands of his era, it becomes one of the more attackable elite forehands. For the modern version, you can make cases for guys like Zverev, who is often targeted on the forehand more than his elite backhand. But the data and the eye test both pull you toward Daniil Medvedev. Medvedev's entire game is built on the backhand. Shot quality models repeatedly show his backhand grading higher than his forehand in both pace and consistency, which is extremely rare at the top level. Among current players, he produces fewer winners and fewer forced errors per forehand than almost anyone in the tour today, while still making very few unforced errors. The forehand does its job, but it doesn't scare people the way Sinner, Alcaraz, or even Rublev's forehands do. So for our build, the forehand is Troicki-like in its lack of damage all time, and Medvedev-like in the modern era. Solid, but way too neutral compared to the rest of the field. Backhands are where weaknesses used to hide. All time, the cleanest example for our build is Steve Johnson. Johnson climbed as high as world number 21, won 4 ATP titles, and was one of the best college players ever. But everyone knew the formula: avoid his forehand at all costs and hammer the backhand, noting that he relied heavily on running around to hit forehands and on using a defensive slice rather than stepping in with a topspin backhand. When a guy is known for one of the best forehands on tour and no backhand, that tells you everything. Tsitsipas has one of the best forehands in the game, but his backhand is the obvious target. Shot quality data from ATP's Tennis Insights consistently ranks his forehand as top tier in pace and effectiveness, while his backhand sits far lower among the top 20 players. Opponents go after it relentlessly, especially on quicker courts, and his error rate on that wing under pressure is noticeably higher. He has a huge forehand, but a shaky backhand, and a massive gap between the two. So our cursed backhand is Steve Johnson all time and Stefanos Tsitsipas in the modern era. Slice is about feel, variety, and control, which makes it very easy to spot when someone simply does not have that in the toolkit. For both all-time and modern, we're giving our cursed slice to Andrei Rublev. Rublev is a fantastic player, Masters 1000 champion, consistent top 10, but multiple analyses and even coaches have pointed out the same flaw. His slice and net skills lag behind the rest of his game. His slice tends to float, sit up, and reset the rally instead of changing the tempo or forcing a short ball. It's a panic option, not remotely even a weapon. So the slice for our worst best player is Rublev. And for the volleys, we can stay right where we are. Modern analytics on net points won show most elite players sitting in the mid-60s to low 70s for net points won percentage when they choose good approaches. Rublev, by contrast, has long been near the bottom of the top 20 group in this area, in part because he comes forward less, and in part because when he does, the technique just isn't natural. He either blows you off the court from the baseline or he doesn't. Rublev might actually be the single best example across both eras for elite baseline game, bottom tier volleys. 7-foot giants are amazing for serving down bombs. Not so amazing when they have to sprint corner to corner for 4 hours. All time, this category belongs back with the serve bots again. Isner and Opelka are terrifying in straight lines, and usually dominate when the point lasts 4 shots or less. But once you drag them wide and force repeated direction changes, the point tends to be over pretty quickly. Their size is both their superpower and their Achilles heel. For the modern version, once again, it looks a lot like Perricards. Profiles talk about his massive serve, rare one-handed backhand for such a big guy, and impressive upside, but they also point out that his lateral movement and defensive coverage are still works in progress compared with other elite players. He's improving and he's young, but right now, he's much closer to the classic serve bot mover than Alcaraz or Sinner type athlete. As a fun side note in the opposite direction, you've got someone like Fabio Fognini. On first glance, his footwork sometimes looks like an 80-year-old going for a leisurely stroll. But behind the lazy body language, he's actually extremely quick and agile, with some of the best balance and timing on tour. But our cursed build is the opposite of that. So the movement is Opelka all time and Perricards in the modern era. This one is delicate. We're not just trying to label someone a choker, but if we were building the worst best player, we need someone who has clearly underperformed in the biggest moments compared to how good they actually are. At first glance, you almost automatically look at someone like Nick Kyrgios. Visually, it fits. Constant rants, broken rackets, running monologues with his player box in the crowd. He looks like the last person you trust with your life on the line. He's a literal circus on the tennis court, but the numbers tell a completely different story. Kyrgios actually performs very well when the pressure is on. The ATP win-loss index lists him with a career tiebreak record of 197 wins and 101 losses. Around 57.6% tiebreaks won. That's comfortably above average and right in line with some of the best clutch players of his era. There was even a period where his ATP under pressure rating sat him ahead of guys like Djokovic and Alcaraz in that specific metric. So Kyrgios is not the guy for this category. On the surface, he looks unhinged. Underneath, he's quietly one of the better pressure players of his generation. Unfortunately, the clearest modern example for this slot is Andrei Rublev. Rublev has been a rock-solid top 10 player for years. He has Masters 1000 title, multiple ATP 500s and 250s, and he's qualified for the ATP finals several times. But in Grand Slams, the numbers are brutal. As of mid-2025, he has reached 10 Grand Slam quarterfinals. His record in those matches? 0 wins, 10 losses. He's never made a Slam semi, and it gets worse. A 2025 breakdown noted that he's lost 11 straight matches against top 5 opponents at majors. The ATP under pressure leaderboard backs this up too. An analysis ahead of the 2023 ATP finals had Rublev near the bottom of the field in under pressure rating, pointing out that while his ball striking is elite, he hasn't been brilliant under pressure. Then there's the visual side. We've seen some very public meltdowns. He was defaulted in Dubai in 2024 for yelling at a line judge. He smashed his racket into his own leg so hard at Wimbledon 2024 that he opened a cut on his knee and it started bleeding. He's admitted in interviews that he's had battles with his mentality, and at times he simply could not take it anymore during difficult matches. The human side of that deserves empathy. But from a tennis point of view, there's a clear pattern. Elite level game, great consistency to reach quarterfinals, 0 conversions at that stage, a losing streak versus top 5 players at majors, and an under pressure rating that lags behind his peers near the top of the game. There are other candidates you could mention historically. Ivan Lendl lost his first 4 Slam finals before he figured it out. Goran Ivanisevic lost multiple Wimbledon finals before his miracle run in 2001. The difference is, they eventually broke through. Rublev, at least so far, has not. So for our curse build, the mentality and under pressure package goes to Andrei Rublev. Visually emotional, statistically vulnerable in the biggest moments, the perfect mental profile for the worst best player in tennis. If we stitch this all together into one tragedy of an elite tennis player, we get Diego Schwartzman's serve, Ivo Karlovic's return, Viktor Troicki's forehand, Steve Johnson's backhand, Andrei Rublev's slice, volleys and mentality, and Opelka's movement. And for the modern player, we get Alex Demonov's serve, Perricards' return, Daniil Medvedev's forehand, Tsitsipas's backhand, again Rublev's slice, volleys and mental toughness, and Giovanni Perricards' movement. The funny thing, every single player we just mentioned has been either a top 20 monster or at least very close. Masters champions, Slam semi-finalists, ATP finals contenders. That's the reality of modern tennis. Even the worst shots at this level are still world class. And even though this player might start in the top 20, chances are he won't be there for long.